Movement, metaphor, and tension are three elements present in my work reflecting themes of fluidity and change. While movement in my work represents both movement of natural cycles and movement as an agent of change, tension necessitates change, illustrating discrepancies between our expectations and our reality. I incorporate tension as an element that mirrors growing pains, social discomfort, and disturbing realities. Metaphor represents fluidity. It is an exchange of qualities, expanding each subject's potential while still acknowledging and embracing their diversity. In 2016, I made paintings that utilized movement and tension to build narrative. I-91 South illustrates an individual's view during an early morning commute. Distance isolates the driver from a far-off cluster of other cars, causing tension in the form of social disconnect. And all of the cars drive along in the same direction, their movement shown through repetition of lines created by remaining winter snow and streaks of light shining from the street. Though present in my work, I felt an urgency to explore tension and movement forward, so they were more palpable. This urge brought me to the literary device of metaphor. In 2017, I introduced metaphor into my paintings Pumping Gas and At the Coffee Shop. Both paintings feature a woman wearing a fox mask while completing everyday tasks. Informed by Kiki Smith's use of animals from folklore, the fox woman becomes a metaphoric figure in my paintings. In Kiki Smith's Rapture, a woman exits the belly of a wolf, suggesting an unusual birth, transgressing the animal-human boundary. The woman evacuates the body violently, standing upright with one foot still planted in the torn open stomach of the beast. Borrowed from Little Red Riding Hood, the pair of the girl and the wolf suggest a long-standing power dynamic between the innocence and resilience of femininity and the dominance and cunning of masculinity. Innocence, dominance, and cunning are also questioned by the coupling of the fox image and the woman wearing it in my paintings. Set in the narrative of a regular day in suburbia, the mask is a substitute for feelings of separation, anonymity, and loss of personal identity. The choice of a mask, the fox, is also metaphoric substitution for animal, cunning, and deception. In the paintings, the fox is not using its wit. Rather, it completes a mindless task and commits deception only by shrouding the face of its subject. The wearer of the mask is a woman, whose figure is more traditionally portrayed in painting as reclining and vulnerable. The woman paired with the mask suggests her needs to be guarded, cunning, and somewhat dangerous to complete even monotonous tasks in the public realm. My work with masks was also informed by Gillian Waring and Louise Bourgeois. In Waring's Confess All on Video, Don't Worry, He'll Be in Disguise, Intrigued, Call Gillian. The mask not only guards its wearer, it also impacts the spectator. Distorting any visual account of the person through the mask forces the observer to rely on listening, taking the speaker's words and actions at their full value. In Pumping Gas and At the Coffee Shop, the mask requires the viewer to look deeper into the minutiae of the subject's tasks for answers, and the viewer gains a greater respect, a fear of the unknown, for the subject wearing it. Within both paintings, tension is built on expectations of the familiar. Filling a gas tank is both a familiar act and mundane task, calling on a viewer's experience and personal boredom. The normalcy of the scene is opposed by the mask, generating a schism between known and unknown. Masking the subject erects a barrier between the subject and the viewer, defining an internal space where the subject resides and an external space where the viewer and all visible components of the painting reside. Tension created from this duality is one of identity, not only identifying the object before the viewer, but also how the viewer defines him or herself in comparison to the object. In Kleinian theory, dualities such as the internal versus external are necessary but traumatic mechanisms of emerging subjectivity. Louise Bourgeois' Fée Couturière, a hanging plaster nest of tunnels, uses Kleinian theory as a guide for representing emerging subjectivity through outside and inside. As the viewer attempts to see the whole of the sculpture, she must choose to look at the inside or outside, which exist to the viewer as different spaces, though they inhabit the same space and are the same object. They are like the gas pump and the trees in my painting. The viewer becomes a part of the external realm. Beneath the mask is the internal, the subject's expression and hidden identity. Separating the viewer from the expression of the subject leaves the viewer to interrogate the mask itself, the external, and reminds the viewer that the internal is inaccessible. Confusion is augmented within an otherwise predictable and monotonous environment through a sense of movement. Blue and gray lines in the distant concrete suggest swirling and pooling of water, disturbing function of concrete as a solid foundation. Transient and patchy, the gas prices are not solid, but have a choppy disappearing appearance, shrouded in whites and off-whites and grays in a way that is almost pixelating, suggesting an economic temporality and instability. Tension, metaphor, and movement within my paintings converge to suggest discomfort and disconnect. Falling more in love with the social, active parts of the painting research process, I started to feel the painting itself was permanent, stationary, and sedentary, and I craved something more moving and representative of social interaction. Video granted me easy access to time and audio as vehicles for expressing tension and movement. In my short film, Know Your Offenders, created during the Me Too movement, tension, metaphor, and movement express anxiety, discomfort, and loss born from social ambiguity and negligence. The film begins with distant views of a shoreline, coming in closer to the beach until resting on one group of 3 people. A woman lies on a towel in the sand, sleeping while 2 people nearby, a man and woman, are playing cards on a blanket. The film uses no verbal language, relying only on atmospheric noise of the waves crashing, seagulls crying, and sand scratching. During the card game, the woman jokingly tosses sand onto their sleeping friend, and they decide to bury her. As the woman starts spitting sand and struggling under its weight, a loud screeches to the forefront, expressing panic. The frame tightens and boxes in the face of the woman as she struggles, and eventually her body is completely buried. As the couple's hands keep burying, more hands appear involved packing on the sand. While the couple abandons their burying, people stare at the space where the person-sized lump remains, wondering if there's still a body beneath. As time passes, the body is forgotten. People run and walk over the sand, grinding the beach back down to an even layer. No body found. The camera returns to the lapping waves. A rhythm of movement is set by the waves at the beginning of the film, and is continued in the wave of the hands that brush the sand onto the body in a cyclical back and forth motion. The movement shifts and becomes more chaotic as legs whiz by the camera, running, twisting, walking, tiptoeing over the lump of sand until coming back to a slow lapping of the water. Trance-like and lulling, the motion relates to the separation from consciousness and reality of the scene, the couple disengaging from their social contract and reality and mindlessly continuing their rhythmic piling until their friend is completely buried. Tension is created by tightness of the camera shots and ambiguity of sound. As the subject in the sand realizes the danger of the once innocent situation, the camera tightens, mimicking her suffocation. The sound is physically uncomfortable to hear and screeches forward during the most intense moments of burial, releasing when the body is covered in a way that implies surrender. Use of high angle implies a power dynamic that the woman is powerless in the frame and places the viewer in a position above the subject, suggesting they too are complicit in the burial. The metaphor in Know Your Offenders begins with the setting. In a social sense, the beach is a place for family fun and leisure. On the edge of the abyss of the ocean, the beach, as dry land, is considered the beginning of safety and security. Senses of leisure and safety are betrayed as the sand comes closer to the woman's face and she drowns on land by the hands of her friends. The burial is a traditional symbol of the life and death cycle. Ana Mendietta's Imagen de Jagul similarly uses burial to connote cycles of life and death, and uses herself as a subject representing women. Though the Silhouette series is made to express Mendietta's experience with exile and the absence of a body from a place it once was, much of her work frequently regards acts of physical violence against women, her own life ending with a fall from a window during a domestic dispute. My burial extends to represent cycles of denial or covering up of women's accounts of assault. The many hands that pile the sand act as a metaphor for complicity and solidarity. The onlookers are complicit in the event by acknowledging it without preventing it, and by maintaining a joyous facade in denial of real crimes. A major shift in my work occurred after the video. It became more hopeful, utilizing tension as a device for positive change and equilibrium. It also shifted its focus from the human body to natural elements and everyday objects. Flow is an open wooden room where monofilament suspends heavy steel pipes connected in a loosely jointed, zagging line that trails down to an aloe vera plant. At the other end is a ladder holding a short stack of coverless white books propping up a can of sterno. The can is lit, its flame heats a jar of ice connected to the pipes. Over time, the ice boils to water, rises as vapor, and distills again as water, rolling and collecting slowly until dripping out to the base of the plant. The water supply is finite, and the jar explodes with a pop and shatters if left unreplenished. Flow creates tension through a sense of urgency. The fire burning is threatening, and as the water boils and evaporates, the jar comes closer to bursting. Tension is also physically used as resistance to a weight or gravity, the thin monofilament holding up the heavy pipes, its weight visibly straining. Movement drives flow, equating movement to livelihood. The changing of water's physical states is used to move from one location to the other, melting, rising, collecting, sliding, and gliding down the pipes using gravitational pull. Radiating lines of the aloe plant reach outward and upward like spikes in a bold effort to grow. A greater cyclical suggestion of motion develops as the water feeds the plant filters air, which feeds the flame, which transforms the water. Tumultuous circular boiling of water mimics the rising motion that occurs in the aloe and in the vapor, sending an overall message of growth and rising. The movement and staging of the piece references Fischli and Weiss's The Way Things Go, which documents the life of mundane objects that are propelled into motion along a predetermined path using laws of physics. In the video, there is an understanding of human intervention, like the careful arrangement of items, but no human subjects are present in the frame, allowing the objects to be responsible for themselves. The arrangement of the items allows the objects to work in a system together, progressing forward in motion. The water cycle becomes a metaphor for breaking states. A response to my video work, I see something cold, hard, and tightly structured through repetition, such as the white patriarchal system whose traditions permit discrimination and violence. Then I look to change that state. Heat and pressure make a physical change, just as social pressure makes a social change. Under fire, the particles in the ice achieve more room to move, eventually moving so freely they become vapor, an extremely independent gaseous state. Rising out of the jar into the pipes, the particles collect in water's cohesive but fluid state. Through their collective effort, gain momentum to roll out and down through the pipes to nourish the plant below. The water's changes are necessary to nourish life and generate a legacy through the plant. Aloe is a healing plant and a desert plant. It connotes healing of burns, growth, life, hardiness, and resilience. Exposed, pipes and tubes that regularly promote flow behind walls and beneath floorboards are finally visible, working through splintered, haphazard joints. Connoting marks of civilization, domesticity, construction, and life support for the plant it feeds, the pipes and tubes imply a foundation. Together, these materials work to sustain life despite their unusual construction and alliance, ultimately expressing that what is needed to sustain a life is present in the home and relies on burning passion and a fluid acceptance. This system becomes a complex machine for healing, sustaining a life that will assist in healing future wounds. My focus on movement, metaphor, and tension speaks to my commitment to create works beyond boundaries of medium, works that address the importance of acceptance, fluidity, and the tension of personal and communal growing pains. Thank you. Woo! Yeah!